Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a video podcast of Profiles in Excellence, where we visit with highly skilled individuals who've made a unique contribution to their job or industry. Our focus is typically around chatting with folks about applying technology to business solutions. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Counts. I'm the founder of Fairwinds Logics. We are a San Francisco-based talent acquisition firm and career coaching firm. Today, I have my good friend Joe Galuszka, who is the founder of Fulcrum Associates. They are a SaaS enterprise software sourcing and negotiation consulting firm right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Joe recently published a unique article that really is perfect for today's timing, entitled Business as Unusual, COVID-19 Procurement and Negotiation Scenarios. Joe essentially creates a framework that buyers and sellers can use during these times when so many software licenses are changing, right, due to our work from home scenario. So without further ado, let me welcome Joe. Thanks for being here, Joe.
Thanks, Dan. It's great to be speaking with you today. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Should be a great topic. So Joe, tell us a little bit about your background in contract negotiations and your company, Fulcrum.
Absolutely. My entire career has been in the IT industry with HP, Gartner, and Forrester, working with Fortune 1000 and Global 2000 companies, advising them on negotiating their SaaS and enterprise software contracts. I founded Fulcrum Associates in 2008. We optimized SaaS software contracts by reducing licensing costs, improving contract terms and conditions, increasing business value, and improving the vendor-business relationship.
That's incredible. So that would be certainly relevant to today's times, right? With so much work from home and contract negotiation around licenses that maybe companies don't need or companies need more of right now.
Absolutely. That's why I wrote the LinkedIn article. I thought it would be helpful to provide a framework to our clients of the negotiation scenarios that we're seeing, and also some of the interesting market dynamics that we're experiencing in our negotiations. The COVID-19 pandemic has turned the business world upside down as companies were forced to transition from their office buildings into employees' work from home environments. Yeah. Today, we're also seeing now companies slowly starting to reopen and employees balancing the safety of work from home versus returning to offices and having office interactions. So these transitions are creating a broad array of procurement and negotiation opportunities, and we're assisting our clients in balancing acquiring the safety of their business and responding to the various business circumstances they're finding themselves in, typically with reduced revenue and cost cutting to conserve cash.
Right. Yeah, a lot of that going on right now. What would you say is the key takeaways from your findings so far in this situation?
Yes. Well, we're finding empathy, creativity, and flexibility are the hallmarks of the negotiations that we're involved in. Of course, it's carefully balanced with the financial requirements of a company and also their long-term business objectives of the business relationship. Net, both sides, buy side and sell side, are trying to reach an optimal agreement for their company. But we are seeing a spirit of healthy cooperation and collaboration within business partners as companies are trying to learn how to operate as best as possible in this pandemic.
Right, right. Well, that's good to hear that there's a spirit of cooperation out there. It's
Ye-
actually refreshing.
Yes, at least until you find yourself in a software audit, and then it's
Right.
different thing.
So, what do you mean by business as unusual negotiation strategies? Tell us a little bit about that. I know that's the main topic of your article.
Sure. Well, what we meant by business as unusual um, is exactly what we're seeing in the marketplace today as supply side companies are offering free SaaS solutions and services into the marketplace. Of course, they've developed these solutions to keep their business operational and to address issues that are being created by the pandemic. But we're now finding that they're willing to offer those free SaaS solutions to their customers and potential new customers to help them navigate their way through uh, the conditions that they're finding themselves in the pandemic. Um, some of the examples of this would be, of course, Salesforce Work.com now being partnered with Workday, Qualtrics XM platform, Return to Work Pulse, and ServiceNow's Safe Workplace apps. Buy-side companies are quickly implementing these solutions to keep their businesses operational and responding to emergency conditions, working through the revenue issues that they're facing.
Interesting stuff. So in I'll say the free world, right? The freemium types of software companies. How are those scenarios playing out? And when they have the free utilization of the software, then the one part you really want to use, there's always a little catch to it, right? So how's that playing out?
Yes, that's exactly the issue. So after 90 days, free is not free, and it's time to pay the piper.
Yeah.
Um, these SaaS applications are being offered with introductory or new pricing that's not yet established in the marketplace. So the pricing is in flux. The customers have readily implemented these solutions and are using them to run their businesses. So in that regard, they're a bit on the hook, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're seeing this scenario play out in a couple of ways. One is the supply side vendor now in a position to take advantage of their customer, given the limited negotiation leverage that they have since the solution is already implemented and they're running on it.
Right.
Not necessarily price gouging, but certainly a situation that might be more typical of not optimal pricing and terms and conditions.
Right. Right.
Another case would be actually that the supply side vendor is willing to establish a fair and equitable price, and now they're playing for the long-term business relationship and what might result in the future based on some goodwill shown in the current market.
Sure. Well, what other types of business as unusual scenarios have you been seeing in recent days? Obviously related to the pandemic and COVID-19 that's happening to us.
Yeah, absolutely. The other most typical one would be a SaaS contract renewal, most likely with limited upside. So in this situation, both the buy side and sell side company have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Revenues are off in general by about 20%. Companies are facing layoffs. There's a uncertainty in the future of the business, and both sides of the equation are asking how bad can this get. Um, on the buy side, there certainly is a business requirement to reduce spend in the 10 to 20% range. Renewals are flat with no annual increases, and most likely with very limited or no net new revenue license acquisitions. On the sell side, the vendors, of course, they're still driving their business plans. They're still driving business plans to achieve revenue, to meet sales plans and sales quotas. So they're looking typically for their 3 to 10% annual increases, if not more.
Do you,
And
do you think they're in a realistic position on that?
you know, it really depends on the circumstances, and that's really how the scenario plays out.
Right.
If a vendor is willing to accept their customer's current financial business circumstance, they may accept a reduced payment. They may delay payments. They may extend contract terms. So there's a flexibility that they can show to meet their business partners' requirements. Having said that, they're also in a position potentially to offer a better deal, one that has more incentives, better pricing, higher discounting, increased business value, if you will, to incent a net new acquisition or purchase and drive revenue that way. So we're really seeing it play out both ways, and it's really a matter of both buy side and sell side working to reach an optimal agreement.
So with all the work from home scenarios out there, how are you seeing contract negotiations, change? In other words, what is the most typical way you're seeing that change?
Yes, the work from home negotiation scenario is a classic negotiation with the seller's advantage, typically market leverage. So as companies were forced to move from their office buildings due to the COVID-19 pandemic, employees transitioned to work from home environments. Surprisingly, many companies were unprepared for this work from home or remote work scenario, and they were required to buy additional technology to be able to support their work from home employees. Technology, SaaS software licenses, video conferencing like the Zoom Boom that you see, VPNs, network security. And the issue for the buyer is that those acquisitions were unbudgeted and unplanned. And even more importantly then, were made in an emergency scenario where they needed to respond quickly. Both of those situations, or all of those circumstances, reduce the buyer's leverage. Today, as businesses are slowly starting to reopen, we're seeing another round of acquisitions that are required. So again, additional security based on the increased activity of bad actors that we're seeing continue in the marketplace. Screening into office buildings, so temperature monitoring, contract tracing, and some of the free SaaS applications that we talked about that are being put into the marketplace by the various suppliers. So, all of this is still creating a market where a great deal of transactions are occurring, but the vendors are forced to buy. Now, the question is, how does the supplier respond? And here we're seeing, does the vendor take advantage of their buyer, given their weakened negotiation leverage, and offer less than optimal pricing and terms. Not necessarily price gouging, but certainly less than optimal deals. On the other hand, we're also seeing suppliers reach fair and equitable market competitive deals that are actually good business. And in this situation, they're playing for the long-term goodwill and business benefit of their customer that will return once we're through the pandemic. One outcome that we know, both the buyer and the seller will remember favorable or unfavorable conditions in the negotiations that they're in right now, and that will play out in the future, whether additional business is created or a new vendor supplier is found.
So what are the current state of business transformation projects and those negotiations? How are those coming along?
Yes. So typically, we're seeing business transformation projects that are continuing with somewhat of a buyer's market advantage. So in this regard, you're seeing companies that might not have been too negatively impacted by COVID-19, or in some cases are actually enjoying a bit of a positive boost to their business, like some of the technology companies that we're seeing.
Right.
And in this situation, they then have revenue and available budget dollars to continue with their business transformation efforts, and in fact, probably enhance or accelerate those business transformation projects given a favorable buyer's market. What we see, of course, is that the sellers who are struggling to generate net new business and additional revenue are probably going to be willing to be a bit more flexible on pricing, or again, additional business value that they'll introduce into the project to drive that incremental revenue favorably to their bottom line.
So how would you say then that companies are trying to benefit from transformation projects?
Well, there's a few ways. So one situation we see is where the buy side, understanding they have favorable market conditions, might be a bit too aggressive. They're going to push now for a world-class deal rather than just a best-in-class deal that they could probably negotiate with their supplier. In the case of a world-class deal where they're pushing hard to get the very best of the best, it might be a bit too aggressive, and now they're going to negatively impact their vendor relationship and most likely not see the benefit that they were pushing for.
Right.
Another example, same situation, but another example is where the buy side now realizes again the market is favorable to their position, and they're going to this time negotiate a market competitive deal, a deal that's good for them, favorable for them, and also benefits the vendor. But now, smartly, what they're going to do is push for their incremental business value through contract terms and conditions, and business value that plays out over the term of the contract or the project, and they're going to benefit over a long term. One other case that we should talk about with business transformation is it isn't necessarily always companies that have extra available budget dollars. There is a case to be made where, although a company might be in a constrained business environment, if they're willing to spend the money, they can improve processes through business transformation. And by improving those processes, either increase revenue or improve business operational efficiency. and in the end actually benefit their business. So it's a case of spending money to make money.
So, the obvious question here is, what's the worst case scenario that you've seen out there in recent times around negotiation of contracts?
Well, that is the complete nuclear meltdown.
Okay.
Going out of business is one scenario. Last company standing, and this also plays a bit to the force majeure clause that you're hearing so much about in today's negotiations. So, what's the circumstance we find here? Essentially, both the buy side and the sell side have been negatively impacted by COVID-19. But now, in this situation, the buy side is actually extremely negatively impacted. And you can think of the industries like aerospace, travel, hospitality, and they may actually be finding themselves in a going out of business situation. So what do they need to do? They need to decrease costs by 30% to 50% or greater. They need to cancel unnecessary contracts that might not be necessary or critical to their business operation. And in some situations, they might not even be able to make contractual payments. Their supplier is now in a position to listen to this business case and evaluate the business case to see, is this something we can agree to, or do we need to carry on with our business? Do we need to focus on generating the revenue that we need to generate and achieving the income and incremental income that we need? And here is what creates the impasse. If the vendor or supplier rejects the customer business case, we're now at an impasse.
So, that sounds like a horribly difficult situation. So, when does that challenging situation end?
This is a very difficult situation with challenging circumstances. And in this case, since we are saying it's the worst case or a nuclear meltdown, first off, the customer will push hard. They're in survival mode. This is a matter of staying in business or going out of business. So they're going to be aggressive and they're going to push very hard against the vendor and supplier, and they may actually significantly damage that business relationship and lose all goodwill. Mm-hmm. They may also then determine they cannot make the payments. They actually cannot physically make the payment or have the money to make that payment, and again make that call of not making a payment. The supplier, as we said, is now going to be in a situation, and if they reject that business case, they're going to push back and demand the revenue that is due to them for the services that they've provided. And typically what will happen next is that the supplier will commit to legal action. And this is going to be resolved in court. And it's a complete breakdown of the guiding principles that we stated at the beginning of our conversation in terms of what creates a best-in-class deal.
Interesting stuff, and I know we can talk all day about this because it's certainly a relevant topic to so many companies out there finding themselves in a pickle, right, due to revenues and expenses right now. Any closing comments that you'd like to leave the folks with who may find themselves in this situation?
Yes, first I'd just like to restate my opening comment that empathy, creativity, and flexibility are the hallmarks of best-in-class deals. And of course, they are balanced with a company's business revenue objectives and the long-term value of that business partner relationship. So it's really important that we look at all of those aspects of the negotiation. We do believe that if you're applying those filters, regardless of the negotiation circumstances that you find yourself in, you will ultimately be able to negotiate the best outcome, not only for your company, but for your business partner.
Yeah, wow. Well, all good information, definitely relevant to today's times. I would suspect that a lot of companies are, at your front door, knocking and looking for help through difficult circumstances due to COVID-19. Thank you, Joe, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll put a link in the description here so you can go directly to Joe's article and look through that framework. It's highly informative. And if you're not already subscribed, definitely hit that subscribe button down there, and you'll be up to date on all the new videos that we have coming out. So thanks everyone for being here. Joe, thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Dan.